this place where Alyssa rests?
The problem at MSD is that...
We're here to talk about gun violence, right?
This is more activism than art. I am demanding change.
It's possible if you have the conversation to find the common ground.
And that's actually the quote that's on the fence that covers the building that the shooting occurred. We went through such a trauma, and sometimes we are very low. And seeing those quotes around our school, and especially from Marjory Stoneman Douglas, who our school was named after, reminds us to never give up.
Marjory Stoneman Douglas is a great example of the change that one person can have. She was instrumental in making sure that the Everglades was a protected area, that it became a national park, and to stop the encroachment of development. She almost single-handedly saved the Everglades.
When I came down in 1915, nobody had ever written about the Everglades, except there was very few pamphlets that I found. Nobody knew anything about it.
Marjory Stoneman Douglas was a little 4'8" Spitfire. She was basically a writer. Her father owned the Miami Herald. She called her dad, and her dad said, "Get on the train and come to Florida." And that sparked her big interest in the Everglades.
I loved the whole Florida thing, the South Florida thing. I loved the tropics and the light and the sun and the openness of the landscape and being near the sea and so on.
Well, she gets her start out of nepotism. You know, her father hired her for the Miami Herald, and she starts to take over a society page, talking about the little intricacies of everything from the women's clubs to if there's a new bridge being opened, etc. Later on, she actually goes to Europe. She signs up with the American Red Cross, and it's in Paris where she really struggles with what she really wants to do in life, and writing becomes the key thing. Above anything, she wants to be a writer.
Marjory was well known for trying to save the Everglades, but earlier in her life with women's suffrage, she would take the train to Tallahassee time and time again, and it was about getting the right for women to vote. And she didn't give up until they did get the right to vote.
I think the extraordinary thing about Florida...
She didn't have an environmental background. She was retired, so she was free to go sit at a commission meeting or a group gathering to convince politicians to change the rules and regulations.
Marjory Stoneman Douglas writes about the light in the Everglades and the light in Florida, and she was very moved by it. She came from a very tough early beginning, and the light was very key in her life. And she also talks very poetically in how it hit everything from the sawgrass to the flaps of the birds. So light was very key in her prose. When I take groups out in the Everglades, I actually remember Marjory Stoneman Douglas's, one of her famous lines was that we are never, ever finished with learning. Marjory was so good at the science that she actually sometimes knew more than some of the politicians and had to actually school them. That was actually her gift. She used to her advantage this kind of older, grandmotherly figure that a lot of politicians like to placate. She would snap them right out and say, "I'm not here to play games. I don't care what you think about me. Let's get to what we're here to really talk about."
I don't believe in compromise. You only compromise from weakness. If you're winning, you don't have to compromise. The people who are losing are the ones who compromise.
It's really interesting when Harry Truman came down to inaugurate the park. I'm sure Marjory Stoneman Douglas was smiling. There were lots of people that came together that really struggled to create this park. It took 20 years to protect the park, and Marjory was there from the very beginning. Marjory Stoneman Douglas was bestowed with the highest honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Marjory certainly deserved receiving that award, to receive the Medal of Freedom Award at 103 years old. And President Clinton called Marjory the grandmother of the Everglades.
But I think that she passed it on to the next generation, that we still had a lot of work to be done.
Fight for your lives before it's someone else's job.
It was really touching to watch these children on television when that Parkland incident happened.
Since this movement began, people have asked me, do you think any change is going to come from this? Look around. We are the change.
And it was just very ironic that they had her spirit.
Has learned that our voices are powerful and our votes matter.
All of us who knew her, we all called each other and said, can you believe these students, and you know, what a job they're doing, and they're doing it just like Marjory would have done it.
Just like Marjory Stoneman Douglas paved the way for us as a woman, as an activist, as a compassionate human being who led from her heart and who wasn't motivated by ego or power or money. She was motivated by doing what's right. And I see the same thing in these students. They're taking a stand and they're saying that we care about the world and we care about humanity.
She went on to live to be 108, and up until, I want to say, the day she died, she was still talking about saving the Everglades.
You got to stick with it. You got to see it through. You got to be tough.